Here's a quick look into today's episode.
I felt like I had waned. I felt like I had kind of lost that a little bit in myself. And that formation challenged me just as much as I challenged them. And they will always have a very special place in my heart and mind. I don't have a degree from the place. I don't have a ring. I don't have any of that. But that maroon and white diamond means something to me, and it always will. But I'm looking forward to making a culture there that, people are excited. They want to work there. They want to get that development. They're getting development. I really want our guys not only to be ready to execute the Ranger School mission of being Op4 and doing those kinds of things and being a real hellacious problem for the trolls. We're going to get out there and mix it up for sure. But I want them to be holistically ready to go. Trained in the basics, trained as NCOs, understand the kind of NCOs they need to be, ready to move on from that platoon and go to conventional units and force comm and go be great. Go be great team leaders. Go be great squad leaders, platoon sergeants in their own right, and take those standards and that lethality and that skill with them. If I can do that, I'm good with that. I'm good with that as my swan song, if you will.
What's the one thing that you tell somebody you've got to think about in preparation for a Best Ranger that's different than what you thought it would be?
The speed. If you think you're fast enough, you're not. You got to go faster. You got to have the ability to not only speed in pace, but the speed in recovery. You have to have a very short window of time that it takes you to get your shit back together, right? I've had so much bottled up, I think, coming out of this last assignment that has allowed me to kind of get off my chest and talk to somebody about and tell somebody about. This isn't like dinner table conversation. My wife doesn't want to hear about this stuff. And I think it's awesome, and I appreciate you giving that to me, and the folks in ROTC, the folks back at Regiment, the folks at A&M. Thank you to everybody at A&M. It was a special place. It was incredible. Opportunity to work over there with those officers, NCOs, and the cadets, now lieutenants. I hope to see them come through the schoolhouse, and I hope that they understand that I'll be a lifelong resource for them. And I don't mean that as lip service. I'm serious. I want to say thank you to the Ranger Regiment for helping develop all of this stuff over the years. Charlie Company, obviously, a place that is very special. CERT, outstanding teammates that I've had there. Everybody knows who they are, but they've all had a hand in kind of making this thing. I hear what you're saying. Like there was definitely a time in the Army where it was like, wow, let's play how bad we could suck at our job today. You know what's not cool? Not being able to deal with hard things that come up and people that tend to sham and tend to want to live that bare minimum life. They're going to be in a lot of situations that are not cool, right? I think it's cool to be resilient. I think it's cool to be skilled. I think it's cool to be motivated and disciplined to achieve things. I think that's cool, right? And I think anybody that is in this profession would need to share that sentiment.
Welcome to another episode of Teach Me to Fish, where our purpose is to help leaders better understand what drives people. In today's world, the core of recruiting and retaining talent revolves around leadership. And not just average leadership, but motivated, values-based, inspirational leadership. Our purpose is to get a little bit better every day. Progress equals small victories and stacking habits. Habits like getting up early, working your butt off, learning something new, being positive, and surrounding yourself with phenomenal people.
Hello.
Morning. Let's go.
Hey, good morning. How are you? Yeah, let's fucking go, man. It's 6 a.m. and bright on your side.
It's just getting started. Let's go.
Yeah. No, I'm way more. I'm so happy that we're able to do this installment. This is so much better than sweat running down my ass in a heated car that I can't connect to, and turn on the air conditioning while my wife is like this through the blinds, like, you mother. Not anything yet. So it was like I was sitting there the whole time. I was sweating hard from the car. I was sweating harder from the wife. Today, crushed the workout, took the kids to the gym. We're up with family in Atlanta, and my cousin he works for a police department up here, so he has a nice home gym set up. So Every time I come in here, I hit that, and then we took the kids over there because I want to get them almost 10 and 8 years old. So I think it's time we start with a little bit of strength and conditioning work with them, introducing them to some of the weights. So got in the gym with them for about a good 30
Yeah.
minutes and worked them through it. Of course, they wanted to go right to playing on all the machines. I'm like, hold on, we got to warm up. We got a couple other things we got to do, but they had a great time. And then after that, I had to get mine in. So I crushed it, feeling good, feeling great. But then I was like, crap, man, I got about like 15 minutes. I need to get over there and get ready to go. So I'm excited.
Where are you at right now?
So I'm in Kennesaw, Georgia. Our household goods are set to be delivered on like June 6th. And then I'm supposed to report to ARTB on June 10th. So it's a very quick turn. We're going to go sign for the house tomorrow, but there's really no point in staying in a house that has like nothing in it. So luckily my wife's family, this is where I met her up here. So they live up here. So it's one of the key reasons we even came back in the first place is because we have support like this.
Yeah, for sure. Going back to Fort Benning though, that's got to be pretty special.
It is. Yeah. It's really, so much of my career is going to be spent at that installation by the time it's all said and done. Cause I had about 13 years or so in that place when I went to Texas A&M. So, going back and essentially finishing out my career, we're looking at having, 16 and some change years on one installation. So it's, in the Army, in terms of the Army, that's actually kind of a huge blessing when you want to talk about stability.
Yeah, for the family. And with Fort Benning for like an infantryman, like everything consequential you do like in your career happens at Fort Benning. So for somebody like me who my only months that I was stationed there was for the captain's career course, but like everything consequential that you do happens at Fort Benning. And so it always like gives you this reminder when you see the towers or when you see a certain piece of stretch of road or something like that, you remember from something that happened.
100%. Yeah. I kind of tell anybody that's going to go infantry that like Fort Benning is the, right? It's like the toilet drain. It's maybe a bad analogy because like it sounds like I'm crapping on Fort Benning, but you're going to go around and around and you're always going to circle back to Fort Benning eventually, like whether that's for professional development or eventually it was going to pull when you think you're out, it's going to pull you back in.
It pulls you back in. Yeah,
that's right.
Yeah. Well, hey, we kicked off or we wrapped up last time. We were just about to the point where you were talking about, you were getting to the point where you're going to talk a little bit about moving from the Rangers, moving from Fort Benning and making this decision to go to Texas A&M. And how did that kind of come about? And then like what was some of the ways that people influenced you to maybe do something like that?
That's a great question. I'm glad you asked. So it's one of those situations where there was a lot of thought that was put into it. It definitely wasn't a random pull, right? Coming to the end of my time in regiment, it was incredibly difficult for me. It was a really hard stretch of time. I've since learned that and matured in a way that you start to understand that the things that you do in your career or your life are just things that you have done, right? Like I was in Ranger Regiment. I went to Ranger school. Sure. I did this. I did X, Y, Z. That doesn't necessarily mean that when those chapters come to an end, that means that you end, right? Mm-hmm. It's something that you did, right? It's not necessarily who you are, and when that comes to an end, that's it for you, mm-hmm. right? Mm-hmm. And I was struggling with that. I was struggling with that mightily because, as you know, a place like the Ranger Regiment, it's not a job. When people want to talk about like, oh, I go and I do a job, right? Mm-hmm. Sure, you work at Amazon. Cool, that's a job, mm-hmm. right? We work over at McDonald's, obviously, that's a job, right? When you are in the 75th Ranger Regiment, it's a way of life. It's a profession. It is something that transcends just a 9 to 5, just a job, right? Yeah. Because the stakes are so high. The stakes are always so high. So it's all encompassing. So when that was coming to an end for me, when I knew I hit my limit of advance, what I had told myself a long time ago as a, kind of a young man was, when my time comes that I am done with this place, I'll know it. And the last thing that I want to do is sit there and discredit myself and this organization and my career by trying to hold on too long.
Yeah.
And trying to find ways to just kind of hang around and darken the doorway, right?
Yeah.
So I knew my time was coming to an end. I had a shoulder surgery. Reconstruction took a long time to get back from. I wound up timing out on my professional timeline there, and I knew the writing on the wall. It was either I was going to go find something or I was going to be asked to leave, one of the two, right? And so, before they did that, I put some thought into what it was I wanted to do. What I really wanted to do was continue to make an impact, right? So I'm struggling with this identity crisis of I'm not going to be in the Ranger Regiment anymore, a place that was impactful on me in so many ways, and a place that I felt like I was really making an impact and had made an impact on so many that had come through the CERT schoolhouse or the various places I had served, whether that was Charlie Company, HHC, or Delta Company in snipers, or Delta Company headquarters platoon sergeant, which is where I was at when I left. And I thought, what better place to make an impact than to go to ROTC? Because the easy road would have been, let's stay on Fort Benning. Maybe let's go to Bullock or something like that, go do some instructor time over there. I'm not knocking that assignment. I know it's an important place, right? Any of the Benning schoolhouses, I get it. I understand.
Yeah.
But by the time that you get those lieutenants, by the time you get those soldiers, somebody's already influenced them for good or evil or, what have you, right?
Yes.
So what I wanted to do was show what a competent and professional and confident and fit, to an extent, NCO would be able to do with these, ROTC kids, with these young aspiring officers, with the cadets. I wanted to show what a good officer NCO relationship is supposed to look like, because across the Army, and in my experience, and it even had infiltrated regiment to an extent, there was a push-pull, there was a distrust, things were kind of going a little bit south, in my opinion, and my experience, from what I remember the regiment being as an NCO-run organization, and an organization where officers really trusted those formations to do that job, to a little bit more of this push-pull that was happening, a little more of this distrust. And not telling tales out of school, because if you hit the guys in the cough with the truth serum about how they felt about NCO officers at that time, they would tell you, not great right now.
Yeah.
And so I start to think to myself, like, why is that? And I thought it's got to be it has to be systemic, because these guys don't have enough time in the Army to really garner that mindset. So where is this coming from? And I'm thinking to myself, it's got to be coming from the grassroots. It has to be coming from a place like ROTC or whatever commissioning source you're coming out of, right? It's just the simple fact that a lot of these young officers just have not had an exposure to NCOs, or they've had the wrong kind of exposure to NCOs that builds this distrust. And unfortunately, across the career, if you're already kind of jaded that way, in my experience, it tends to continue to diverge, right? And so that was what drove me to ROTC. So I sent out a bunch of emails. I had the backing of the battalion command team to do so, and we kind of wound up drug dealing it, like most things happen in terms of coming out of Ranger Regiment. Was able to get acquisition outside of marketplace. I sent a bunch of emails, probably 20 different programs. I heard back from about 10 or 12 of them, and they were, oh, well, maybe next year, maybe this, or, a little wishy-washy. Some of them I never heard from, right? And then Texas A&M responded, and they hit like a prize fish. I mean, they were absolutely like, absolutely, we want you. We've seen your soldier talent profile, and we really like your experience. Can we do a phone call?
Yeah.
So they do a phone call, and they really treated it in such a way that you had like
recruiting,
recruiting a unit mentor, right? Pull you in, a sponsor, if you will. And they rolled out that red carpet. And so they told me that I would be brought in for a very specific reason, a very specific program to come into at Texas A&M, which was Rutter's Rangers company, right? And at the time, I'm kind of chuckling because I'm like, Ranger company, like, what are you guys talking about, right? I was like kind of clowning on it a little bit, I was like, oh, okay, all right, sure, Ranger company. But they kind of explained it to me like, okay, hey, these kids are kind of our honors program, if you will, for ROTC here. They've signed up to do more. They've signed up to do additional labs, additional ranges, additional FTXs, and they typically are the ones that are getting sent to our Kate schools and, going to jump master, air assault, jump school, air assault, and all that kind of stuff, right? Just the hard chargers. And they told me that it would be, a little bit more on my plate. I wasn't quite ready for exactly the more they were talking about, because from what I heard about ROTC, it was very minimal, right? And if you've seen one ROTC program, you've seen one ROTC program. There is a huge bell curve of, the intensity, the scrutiny, the level at which they operate, right? So Texas A&M is all the way over here at as high tempo as you can possibly get. And I wound up going to the program that was the highest tempo and the highest tempo program that you could possibly get to. So for me, for a transition for me, it was a blessing in disguise, right? It was a little bit of a blessing and a curse, right? Because it's like, yes, stepping into this program where this ain't a take a knee. This is very far from take a knee. In fact, even if you weren't in Rutter's company, the rest of the cadre there work extremely hard too, because it's a senior military college. So there's no take a knee, but at the same time, I wouldn't have had it any other way. Because for somebody like me, if I would have come out of regiment and got sent to East Central South Kentucky School of, whatever. Yeah, I hope that's not an actual school, but you know what I'm saying? So like a small program with no support, no funding, and generally no enthusiasm, no buy-in, I would have lost my mind, because I've talked to some other ROTC cadre that have done years at schools like that. And they tell me I barely put a uniform on during the week. I might be in a uniform like a couple times a month. And not that I love wearing a uniform that much, but that tells me a lot about your program. And it tells me a lot about what you're actually accomplishing there. And it tells me a lot about like the product you're creating. And I want something I can have pride in. I want my guys and gals to be prepared for the next level.
Yeah. And it's very contagious because I was a part of ROTC for years, and, as a field grade, as a Brigade S3 and a Brigade XO. So I would visit every one of the universities on the East Coast, right? And the senior military instructors, they set the tone for the organization. And if they're showing up in uniform, if they're showing up for PT, if they're putting in good PT, they're, it's this trickle down effect. You can see it in the cadets that's out there. And then they inspire you. It works both ways, right? They inspire you to give your best because you want to set a good example 100. For them. Yeah.
100%. Absolutely.
Yeah.
That's extremely true. I learned just as much from them as they learned from me.
Yeah. But, and you need you need this inspiration, you need this motivation, you need this purpose, you need this reason to keep going, to sink your teeth into something every day, right? And especially if it's something that you already have this tacit knowledge, right? You already had this knowledge, you have this stuff that these young soldiers, these young cadets are looking for, right? And you pour them in, and then we talked to the last one about, the soldier first, the people first, and you're like, okay, what do I got to pour? How did you first kind of get your head around what was going to be the culture of Texas A&M or Rutter's company? And how did you kind of decide there's training and then there's culture, right? You got to, how did you decide what these are the things I need to do first?
Right. So when I first got there, I was brought in by Colonel Blake Connors, who was the PMS at the time. And then the NCOIC of the program was Master Sergeant Alex Roysden, 173rd guy, 101st guy, just finished up his time over at AMU as the first sergeant there. We hit it off. Major Hebner was there, and then Major Brightwell, who's over ADA guy over in Germany now. Major Hebner's Texas Army Active Guard.
Was Jason Wayne your commander the whole time or just the second 2 years?
Just the 2 middle years.
Okay, sure. The middle years. Yeah. Okay.
Yep. Yes. So, but when I first came in, they had poured a lot of, Colonel Connors had poured a lot of resources and attention into rudders. He had taken Ranger Challenge and actually combined it into Rudder's company. Prior to that, it was a separate thing at Texas A&M. So you had some of your best and brightest cadets competing with your other best and brightest cadets for time, resources, all this stuff. So what he did was he combined it, which I think was an extremely wise move and something that we continued through my time in the program there. But that first year, you know, it was me coming in and learning the ropes, and it was me drinking out of a fire hose of information about how the program worked, what the relationship with the Corps of Cadets was, what the relationship with the university was, ROTC. And the funny thing about going to a place like that is you find out you really have like four bosses, right? You've got the Army, that's a boss. You got ROTC. You got the university's a boss. You got the Corps of Cadets is a boss, because in order to be in ROTC at Texas A&M, you have to be in the Corps of Cadets. It doesn't have to be the other way. In fact, 60% of the Corps of Cadets, roughly, doesn't even commission. So, you know, you have to adhere to these other standards that they have there, and you have all these other factions kind of competing, right? So I was figuring out my way around that, what I could actually do logistically, what to apply it. And then, you know, honestly, I had some learning to do myself, right? Because when you come out of a place like Ranger Regiment, of course you understand, you know, the Ranger handbook. And of course you understand, you know, how point targets are executed in the 75th Ranger Regiment, time sensitive targets, point raids, the things that we do routinely, like in our sleep, right? Well, how about EA Dev? Or how about, you know, what an actual attack to seize terrain, right? Versus just a raid with that planned withdrawal, right? Or how about a SOSRA, right? When you're taking on an actual target that has some sort of obstacle to defeat, right? Or a breach point to. So all these things that they were kind of tasks that were kind of glossed over in the Ranger Regiment, if you will, because everything was very smash and grab, smash and grab. And after the GWOT kind of officially ended, the Ranger Regiment started to transition it a little bit into it, but I wasn't there really long enough to reap the benefits of all of that.
Yeah.
So I had to learn a lot of that, right? There was some really good professional development for me. There was really good professional development in marksmanship as well, because now we're back to iron sights. Now we're back to the most novice of shooters you could imagine, right? Yeah. Now we're back to all those sorts of things. So after I assessed my own knowledge and skills and kind of brushed up on the things that I needed to learn, which happened very quickly, then I was able to now start taking the things that I understood from my career in the Ranger Regiment, how to make things better, how to bring a new level of intentionality and attention to detail in the training, the why behind things that we did, not just the how. I can provide you the how all day. Yeah. But if I don't give you the why, when I walk away, that concept really hasn't sunk in. Situational football is the term I've kind of taken from sports, right? If you understand the down and distance and time of combat, you're going to understand why and how I do A, B, C, and how I'm going to apply this, right? So those were the things that I wanted to bring to the table in year one, was kind of a deeper level of knowledge, more refined, and then a ruthless attention to detail. Obsessive about the details. You're going to hear me say that a bunch. Are your straps rolled and stowed? Is the camelback hose fed on your non-firing side? Those kinds of things, right? Because what I was noticing about the formation was they were hungry for knowledge. They had a standard and a discipline. It wasn't quite to my liking, but it was there, right? This was already a good program, but I saw an avenue to great. Yeah. And it started with the little things. Right? Because a poem, I guess it's a poem. I'm sure you're familiar with it. I know you've heard the saying, because of a nail. You know, because of a nail, the shoe was lost. Because of the shoe, the horse was lost. Because of the horse, the commander was lost because the battle was lost and the war was lost, right?
Yeah.
So I came in with a very because of a nail sort of mentality when I got into this formation, because mind you, I didn't have to be the NCOIC. I was there to be an NCO under Master Sergeant Royston, who was doing the more organizational level stuff, which was a whole nother beast that in year two, I definitely got to find out about, right? But I got to be this pit bull that got to go into the formations and clean up training. And that's what I was brought there to do. And I can honestly say that I really did feel like I garnered the trust of those cadets pretty quickly. I didn't claim to be an expert on all things. I definitely asked them how does this go? How do you typically do this? What is being taught here? What did you take back from summer camp? How does that work versus range? Once I kind of synthesized that information, then it was, okay, well, we're going to do this now. We're going to start doing the little things right. If we don't do the little things right, we're going to start paying for those things, right? This is not a soft glove approach here. This is like, we're going to be accountable and ruthlessly accountable for the things that we do well or don't do well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So like your first year, you get into the basics. I see that every day, every time we do an exercise out here with JPMRC, we show up to the combat training center and these units show up and, sometimes we can go past some of the little things or forget about some of the little things. And people say phrases like be brilliant in the basics. And they're like, well, what does that actually mean? And it's the little things like when you said the hose going over their shoulder or like how you wear your gear and you're like, well, shooter's preference. He likes to hose his magazines this way. Well, sometimes the younger soldier doesn't have a preference. He doesn't know enough about it. He hasn't shot enough rounds. He hasn't done enough live fires to be able to really have a say on how it should be. So you just need to tell him, right? And that's okay. It's, you say we start off with the why. Sometimes you don't need to start off. Sometimes you just need to comply. Right? Especially in those first couple of years. I just need you to comply. I just need you to trust me that the way we're doing this is the right way to do it. And then you can start getting creative, right? There's so many different, analogies to like, or, stories of like how you can kind of do that in sports and stuff like that. So I love that was your first year or so.
Yeah, totally, sir. You hit the nail right on the head. For me, when I hear something like shooter's preference, that kind of pisses me off. It's like one of my pet peeves, right? It's like, it's a hand wave, in my opinion. Unless you're in a unit where you have experienced guys, there's a shooter's preference. And then there's, right, at a unit that's experienced, they have understood, they've cut their teeth, they know what works for them. There ain't no shooter's preference in ROTC. There's no shooter's preference in, especially like a first year at ROTC, right? There's no shooter's preference at like these basic levels because, again, they don't have that experience. And the worst part is there's a lot of mid-level leaders out there. I know there's a lot of NCOs that don't have the knowledge institutionally. So they lean on shooter's preference so they don't get exposed because they don't know how to fix this issue.
Yeah. And for the senior, I think for some of the senior folks, you take shooter preference and you replace it with like mission command. And you say, well, I just want to give left and right limits and then allow you to kind of off you go. Well, for some of the leaders, they don't need just left and right limits. They need actual orders. They need actual specifics. They need actual details. And you will set up your engagement area in this location at this time. And this is when you will do your op order. And this is when you'll do your rehearsals. And this is when you're going to be ready to go. Right? Like you owe it to them, as a senior leader. And so it starts there with the basics and it makes its way up when you become a, platoon leader, company commander or something like that.
100%. Yeah. You can trust what performs. You have to put them in a position where you give them those task condition standards. They perform that. Mm-hmm. Outstanding. They start doing that consistently. Cool. Now, here's the intent. Now that I understand that you can do these basic things, you can walk and chew gum at the same time. Wonderful. Now, here's the intent and end state. Yeah. And based on the way that we do things, let's go figure it out. But that's the next evolution of that.
Yeah.
It has to start that down and in with that very specific stuff, like the dress right dress and things of that nature, because one of the best leaders I had explained to me that dress right dress is a way of ensuring order in moments of chaos.
Yeah.
It's not because we want to look pretty. It's because we want to be able to find our stuff if we had to be out of here in 30 seconds.
Yeah, no doubt. You only take one boot off at a time. You only open up so much of your MRE. You only pull one thing out of your rucksack at a time. You only take one of the straps open at a time. You don't open up both and empty out everything on the ground. No doubt. And then it just becomes habit. I think those same habits translate into other things. They translate into how you prioritize your time in school, on what classes you do first. Well, how about you do the one that's the most important? Or how about you do the one where there's a quiz or a test coming up that's going to be scored, in the next couple of days? Like, it gives you the opportunity to prioritize some of those things. Once you got past some of those basics that first year, what was the next big thing that you said, I'm going to tackle with these cadets? Because now you're probably getting a year or two in and you're like, okay, I've got that freshman class is now a junior, or the sophomores are now about to be seniors. And what did you have to kind of do next?
So after that first year of kind of being down and in, like I realized that in year 2, I was going to be the NCOIC, right? Now, Major Huebner was still there, Major Brightwell was still there, but I was the only NCO in town, right? And so understanding that now that we have some down and in established, I need to start looking a little up and out. Mm-hmm. And so with the up and out, I was very insistent on things like, in Rutter's company, we have a staff, right? We have staff development. We have a CO, we have an XO, we have a first sergeant. You've got a S4, S3, assistant S3, a PAO, right? So, and then we have OTMs, the observer trainer mentors in the company as well. They're all senior positions. They were formerly all senior positions. We'll get to that. But at that time they were, right? And so what I was insistent about us doing and picking up a battle rhythm with Major Huebner, because, obviously officers do this a little bit better. Prior to me getting there, I do not believe, at least I was told, they just didn't have staff syncs. Mm-hmm. They didn't have it. They didn't sit down one day a week and go, here's what's happening. Here's what needs to happen. Here's down the road.
Yeah.
And so we established that. We established staff syncs. And then also I wanted to see the Rutter's Constitution, right? So there was a piece of paper that is called the Rutter's Constitution. Rutter's company is technically a student organization that's heavily supported by Army ROTC, but it is not an Army program. It's through the university. So in order for them to get ratified to be able to be an organization, every single year they have to ratify their constitution. So I wanted to see that. And we started to clean that up a little bit. We started to clean up basically, standards and discipline in the language of those kinds of things. Because my long-term goal for Rutter's company was to make the organization survivable, right? That's my long-term goal. There was a book that I read. This is so corny. I read a book. So I was reading a book called Turn the Ship Around, right? It was actually a professional development book that Colonel Wayne issued out to 1st Brigade. And by this time we were in 1st Brigade. So I don't remember all of it, but one of the parts that resonated with me was leaders are more concerned sometimes about being missed when they're gone, as opposed to building an organization that is going to withstand that test of time, that is resilient after they leave, right?
Yeah.
And so I asked myself the question, really, truly, am I more worried about being missed, or am I more worried about building something that will survive after I go, after we all go as cadre, right? And are we going to build leaders that are competent and confident and worthy of their formations and able to run this organization at the level that they're at right now? I can't think of any way to professionally develop them to a high standard compared to their peers when they go and commission than them being able to run something like Rutter's company.
Yeah.
To train and develop and mentor the formation from freshman to sophomore to junior to seniors, because all those MS levels exist within Rutter's company. And so we cleaned that up, and I started to implement the tenets and rules for the company. So I guess now we're transitioning into year 3. And what I really saw was a need to have tenets and rules for the company, right? So obviously the Ranger Regiment has tenets that it's based on, and it has priorities like the Big Five, and there are rules, policy letters that govern how the organization is to be run. So for Rutter's company, I was very insistent that we had some tenets. So the 3 tenets for Rutter's company are the Ranger Creed, the Rutter's Constitution that gets ratified every year. That's a living, breathing document, right? That is it's fluid enough to allow the organization to adapt with time, right? The Ranger Creed is rigid, right? And then there's the Aggie Honor Code, which is, an Aggie doesn't lie, cheat, or steal, or nor tolerate those who do, right? So I wanted to tie not only the Ranger Creed, the Constitution, but then back to the university as well, so that they had that identity as Aggies as well, not just Rutter's Rangers, but Aggies. And then I had 2 rules. 2 rules. We had 2 rules in the company, and they were really all encompassing. The first one was the golden rule. Jesus Christ seemed to think it was important to treat people with respect and dignity and treat them as you would be treated. So that's number 1. And if he thinks that's a very important rule, golden rule, then it should be one of your rules, in my opinion, right? So treat people with respect, even though they may be your subordinates, they might not be anywhere near as, where you're at in the organization. It takes nothing to be kind, right? So that was number 1. And number 2 is do nothing to bring discredit upon yourself or the organization. That's all encompassing. You lie, you cheat, you steal, you do these kinds of things. You don't live in keeping with our tenets. You violate that rule. I don't need 15 rules.
Right.
That's it. We had 2 overarching ones at the end of the day and 3 tenets by which we run. So we ratified that in the Constitution. And we also implemented our Big Five, which our Big Five for Rutter's company was fitness, academics, ranger skills, marksmanship, and patrolling. Those Big Five priorities are what governed everything that we did, how we built out training. We checked it against the Big Five. Which one are we getting at here? When we talk about fitness, we're talking about that holistically, not just physically, but also holistically fit. We talk about academics. You had to have an A in MilSci, had to have an A, and you had to be passing all your other courses in accordance with the GPA standards to be good for ROTC, but you had to have an A in MilSci or you were gone, right?
Yeah.
Ranger skills, being savagely, skilled at your 10 level skills, or as my cohorts at the program would say, overdevelop the hard skills, right? So Staff Sergeant Henson, who worked with me for the last 2 years or so, that's one of his big things, was overdeveloping the hard skills. And it was great to have him there to be able to do that kind of stuff, because he brought a fresh lens, fresh perspective, and a whole nother skill set from 275, the last couple of years. So he really was a huge force multiplier for us over there to be able to do those things. And then, patrolling, right? Which one am I at? Ranger skills, marksmanship, marksmanship, obviously huge in the program. Texas A&M has a reputation across ROTC as being the best shooting program out of the entire nation. And that is pound for pound, shot for shot, the best shooters in ROTC. And that's something we take a lot of pride in, and we put a lot of time into. And then patrolling, right? So at CST last year, I don't want to take this a direction where I start talking about metrics this, metrics that, but let's just say that last year Texas A&M at CST did some things that were absolutely historical. And the number of recondos, right? You familiar with the what the recondo is, right, sir? So the number we had, it doubled any other senior military college, and it was double or triple any other program in the country. We had 2 regimental, almost 3 regimental honor grads, nationally ranked. And of the 33 cadets that we sent from Rutter's company in camp last year, 27 of them fell somewhere in the top 25% nationally or better, with 8 of them sitting in the top 5%. So when we talk about these things that we were trying to hone down on, I really do feel like we hit the mark with a lot of them. Some of them we didn't. Some of them I would still want to clean up, but
Yeah.
overall, the direction of the program, when you see where it was from that first year getting there, where it was good, but a lot to clean up, all the way to the evolution of the senior year, my seniors, class of 2026, being able to plan, prepare, and execute a block of training with me largely not even involved because we were training up for best ranger while this was going on.
Mm-hmm.
They hit everything in their 8-step training model. They did all of their military decision-making processes. They checked box after box after box. The only thing I really needed to do was literally supervise and refine, hit a couple of sanity checks real quick, and then be able to go there and literally enjoy the training. We did fire and maneuver lanes. That's what we did. We didn't run sticks for our spring FTX. We did fire and maneuver because we saw that there was a need to niche down on some of that, right? You lose a lot when you're going through these patrols in the woods and it gets so planning centric and it gets so be quiet and lay here. And then we go to hit this target at actual execution after the recon and everything else. And we look like Keystone cops. We're bounding in the wrong direction. We can't do mag changes. We don't understand how to use our support by fire. It looks terrible, right? So we decided that we were going to really hone down on that with our junior population, our MS1s, MS2s, and with the seniors actually OCing and then running the lanes as a PL and a weapons squad leader and having to go hit a lane. There's your left, there's your right, just like you would do it like DMPRC at Fort Benning or any kind of live fire. And I told them, I think this is really great professional development for you guys because this is going to be the kind of stuff you're actually going to do with your units. Very rarely are you going to get to a unit and run 6 lanes for 3 days, right? Like patrolling around, you're going to go do live fires. You will do that
for sure.
Like, and you need, and you plan one in IBOLIC, right? So let's give you the first exposure to this. We got them on about 150 meter lane or so. They fired, they maneuvered, they've set in intermediate support by fires. We suppressed, obscured, secured, reduced, and assaulted a mined wire obstacle. It was engineer tape. We do the best we can in ROTC. And it was awesome. We were able to get iteration after iteration with them, and you just saw the level of confidence and competency just kind of growing with these guys as they did their iterations. It was absolutely awesome. And the National Guard was nice enough to help us out a lot and got us Chinooks to air assault into this one. So then where we ran it, it was a lot of fun. It was a blast. I had a great time.
Yeah. You spit out a lot of stuff right there. And the thing that I want to kind of, for people that are listening that might be like, okay, well, how does this kind of apply to whatever program or whatever, type of organization that you are a part of? When you start with the basics, right, from the Army, or when you show up to an organization and they say something like, well, we do it differently here, or we don't do that around here, I think the hair on the back of your neck needs to start to stand up. Right, especially if you come from another organization. But if you're brand new, that's all they know, right? So what every organization, whether it's ROTC, whether it's an infantry battalion, or it could be anything. It could be a transportation battalion, in the middle of the country. Nobody's airborne. We're not doing any of that airborne stuff. We're barely doing live fires. But if you stick with like the Army systems, if you stick with doctrine, if you say things like we're going to do a staff sync and a training meeting, and every other week we're going to do a command and staff, we're going to use the 8-step training model. For something bigger, like we're getting ready to go on a 6-month deployment to Europe, maybe we should do MDMP. You're like, we don't do MDMP around here. We don't even wear uniforms, and it's like, okay, the hair on the back of your neck should stand up if you've been in the Army for a while. And you should bring the Army to that organization and just use the phrases that people are comfortable with. Don't call it something different, right? Don't say, well, we don't do training meetings around here. What we do is we call it and fill in the blank with some other thing. And then when you look at the lowest level, the fire team live fire, like I love that you guys did that, knock out a bunker. And it's like, wow, that's so boring. Yeah, but if you can knock out a bunker, you can do anything in the infantry at that point. And everything builds upon, creating an L, a team here, a team there, a support by fire. And you have to start with the basics. And the basics just continue no matter how special the unit gets going forward. So I just wanted to kind of wrap that up a little bit and say that what you were doing there at Texas A&M, we should be doing with every unit should be doing the basic Army type of systems. And you don't need to create something new. The Army has already created it for us. It's already got a doctrine. The 8-step training model is sound. You don't need a new app. You just need to follow, what the model says.
Yeah, for sure, sir. I mean, I'm guilty of synthesizing information a little bit in the way that I feel like it would make a little bit more sense to young minds, right? So we introduced 8-step training model, but really what it boiled down for me was when I was explaining it to them, like, listen, this is doctrine. This is what the Army says. This is where you can reference this stuff. Introduce the kids to Army pubs. I was like, you can literally find any of this, since you guys are all digital. Go on to Google, go on to Army pubs, type in search word, type in whatever, and you will find this stuff. You need to be really good at finding information. But what it really came down to for me was like that 8-step training model can be broken down into 3 main categories, which is setup, prep, and execution, right? So in your setup, your 5 W's, right? You're figuring out where I'm going to do this, what's the intention, all this stuff like that, right? And then there are subtasks or questions that are going to come out of that need to be actioned, right? And then prep. Okay, now that I have this conceptually built, now we need to bring together all the material, the MWE, everything else logistically that we need to do this. And then finally execution, right? So if you think in those 3 broad terms, you'll get there. And the kids seem to understand that a little bit better than like, wait, did I do step 6 or did I, it's like, hey, listen, like,
and then eventually
let's take this and
eventually the light bulb goes off and you're like, oh, that was called validating leaders, or that was called reconnaissance. Maybe the first time I hit up this range shouldn't be when it's setup time. Maybe it should have been in the prep time. And the light bulb starts going off and you're like, okay, I like how we simplified it into 3 things, but it was based on the 8 and so on and so forth, Now I get now I get why an SDZ is important. Like at first it was like, I was just something that was in a manual, but as soon as I heard that zip go by my head and I was bounding towards the bunker, you're like, okay, now I understand what 15 degrees is. You're like, okay. That's why they put that little stake out there so that whoever's observing can go, this is when you need to shift fire. Do you understand what that feels like? If you can't feel the zip, if you can't, you're probably 30 degrees. It's not time to shift fire yet. And if you've ever bounded on a bunker where there's somebody in it shooting, you want them to continue to shoot until the last bound on that bunker.
100%. Yeah, completely, sir.
Yeah.
Another thing we were really big on was the concept of preparation over planning. And what I mean by that is selfishly, I kind of wanted to make leaders that understood things from a little bit of that NCO enlisted perspective. And I told them that if they understood things, even to a fraction in those terms, they would get a lot more done, right? And so I felt like there a little bit of a disconnect with how officers are brought up through commissioning sources is everything's plan. Their heads up here in the cloud, right?
Mm-hmm.
But what about preparation, right? One of the most skipped things in the planning process, and you know this to be true, especially when you go into like the schoolhouse environment, you see it almost every single Ranger school mission or any patrol. In that timeline, there's supposed to be rehearsals. Those usually get completely hand waved. And it's because they think that they can only take place in time, like at this one time or whatever. Preparation is like a total thing. It's before, during, after, and it's empowering your subordinate leaders, your NCOs, to be doing those things simultaneously to when you are chopping up your plan and working on it, right? You can have the best plan in the world, but if your equipment is not prepared, your guys are not physically prepared, it's not going to work, right? Mm-hmm. And it goes back to that because of a nail thing, right? Those details, right? So we were always thinking in terms of preparation. And the level that your men, weapon, and equipment are prepared to will then allow you to make your plan.
Mm-hmm.
right? It'll then allow you to actually execute, more than likely, a simple plan, well done, as opposed to this complex, insane plan that is never going to survive first contact. And it's like writing a workout that has 20 different things in it, paper, and it looks great.
Yeah.
And then you're 5 exercises in and you're like, what did I do? You know, like, absolutely not. We're pivoting today, right? And
Yeah.
so
Yeah. What you're getting into now is I want to get into the area of, at this point, you've been there and you probably, in the back of your mind, you're saying, how can I continue to help people after my time is over? How can I continue to help people outside of Texas A&M, right? And you can imagine this is where I think social media, YouTube, the ability to use other tools and say, how do I share what it is and what you're doing there with more people? Talk to me about how, when that started to come to mind and you started considering things like Ranger U, you considered the ability to use YouTube and record some of these things to share with people on a more broad basis.
Yes, sir. So Ranger U has actually got a really funny backstory, or origin story, if you will. I could not get these kids to read. I couldn't get them to read doctrine, right? I couldn't get them to crack it unless I was like standing there, right? And they had these questions that I had answered several times. And I don't have a problem answering questions, but something that I really wanted to try to drive into our formation was like, try going to your boss and asking him a simple question about XYZ before you have exhausted your own resources to try to find this answer. And you're going to get laughed out of the room, or your ass chewed, one of the two. Like, oh, hey, sir, I was wondering where the bag markings are for the company. Well, how about you check the drive or ask your platoon sergeant? It's like little things like that. But like, guys have to be well versed in researching and finding information, right? So they'd have these Ranger handbooks on them, or they'd have ATP 3-21.8 or something. They'd have access to the answer somewhere, like in their pocket. And they're asking me, and I'm like, pull out the book, open it up to here. What does it say? It says this. What does that mean? What means this? So go do that, right? The age we live in has outpaced the pages in the ink, right? It's so much more of a digital age now, and you can't get these kids off their phones. It's like impossible to get anybody off there. Even old people, right? Like my mother the other day, she was visiting, she was on the screen like a lot more than she had been previously, right? And I'm guilty of it too. Everybody is. So I started thinking to myself, I'm really tired of repeating myself. I've probably given this class 500 times. What if I was to take information from doctrine, from the Ranger handbook, or from these tips and tricks that I've learned over the years, and I was to put it in a digital format? I was to put it in a podcast. I was to put it on Instagram, right? And mind you, like, I was very nervous about making this move, right? Because especially a guy who's former regiment, the last thing I wanted was people being like, oh, dude, look at him. He's doing the bro vet, all this. I didn't want to touch that at all. I wanted to get back to meat and potatoes, bare bones. Let's talk some Army shit. Let me show you how to do this basic thing right, because we needed to start building formations back, right? I think there was such an exodus of experience and talent after the GWAT. You have a lot of these young enlisted and junior officer that just don't know. They just don't know where to begin. Some of them just don't understand what right's supposed to look like. So this was coming up on CST time in 2024. I was like, what better time to get this started and, make it something kind of catchy and flashy, like Ranger U, the black and white color scheme, the cool logo. I think it's cool anyway. And, and then start putting information on there and start with the podcast and doing all those kinds of things like that. And it's reached a lot of people. It's helped a lot of people. I don't want to toot my own horn or ring my own bell, but I get messages all the time from people that I do not know, haven't seen physically, but they tell me, dude, this really helped me. That episode really helped me out. You told no lies about this. That video was awesome, and things of that nature. And it started very much in that instructional space. And then it began to pivot, sort of like my time at A&M, right? It started with the very much the down and in, let me show you exactly how to tie your shoes and do this, to now transitioning into a little bit more of that bigger picture, a little bit more of the, the leadership aspect of things and the culture building aspect of things, creating winning teams, creating places that people want to be in, creating a standard that people want to be a part of, because at the end of the day, believe it or not, people really do want purpose, direction, motivation. They want discipline.
Amen.
They want to be disciplined. They want to take control of their life and their formations. They don't want to be waving in the wind. They don't want to, hey, shooter's preference, figure it out, man. And I have no direction. I have no guiding star. I have no standards. I have no tenets. I have no rules. I have nothing to fall back on when it becomes tough. And I think organizations that are elite have that esprit de corps, they have that culture, they have a common operating language, they have an identity through action, through the things that we wear, through the things that we say, that will catch you in those moments when life gets tough or you have experienced something that you don't quite understand how to navigate. I've been very blessed in my life to at least know that I can do this because I've done hard shit.
Yeah.
I've gone through tough times. I've been knocked down. I've had to get up. I've had to fight and scrap. I've lost. I've won. And I'm a Ranger. I can do this.
Yeah.
Right. And so, when we built the culture in Rutter's company, we started with that, this is how. Let's go to why. Now let's transcend to building a place that is special, that has an esprit de corps that follows you, that maroon and white diamond means something when people see it. And I think we've built that. I really do. The guys that have gone on before and had success, they come to other guys' graduations, they pin on their wings. That maroon and white diamond, when people see it, they know that's Rutter's. They understand that. They know it's from Texas A&M. They know about this place. They've heard about this place. It's been apparent that where we go, we are the best at what it is that we do. We give our best every single time. We adhere to a standard of living and a way of being that transcends, what your MOS is or what your chest candy is or whatever it is, right? It transcends that. And that's something that I've been very big on before, and I've talked about before, don't stop being a Ranger, right? It's just because you're not in that unit,
Amen.
just because you don't have Tambouret, anymore, just because whatever, it doesn't mean that you stop being that person, right? And so it's the same thing for the guys at Rutter's. I want them to remember, like, where you come from. Like, remember who you are, bat boy. I want you to remember that, you know what I mean? And remember where you come from and be the man in the room, be the man in the room. Like, there's so many places where people are looking for leadership. They're looking for help.
Amen.
They're looking for that person that's going to push the car that's broken down or open the door or step to somebody that's, dangerous, right? Or a situation, right?
Yeah.
So be the man in the room. Go be the Ranger that you are. Go to the friction point. Don't be scared of it. You can be scared, but do something about it, right?
Yeah.
Have the courage to try. Have the courage to have the character to be who you are and embrace it. Don't run away from it, right? Unfortunately, there are guys with tabs or scrolls or whatever that have lost that. Typically, like, technically I can't take it away from you. Yeah, sure, you went on the deployment. Yeah, you got the tab, whatever it is. But we all know some people that have lost that. They're not living that anymore. They lost it a long time ago. And for me, Ranger is a state of being more than anything else. And I said this in my speech that I gave to Rutter's company at the banquet, that they they really did help me find that again in me, right?
Yeah.
I felt like I had waned. I felt like I had kind of lost that a little bit in myself. And that formation challenged me just as much as I challenged them. And they will always have a very special place in my heart and mind. I don't have a degree from the place. I don't have a ring. I don't have any of that. But that maroon and white diamond means something to me, and it always will. And to be honest with you, no matter what else I've done in the Army, and I've been some great places, and I've done some awesome stuff, and I've got great memories with a lot of people, but I don't think I'll ever have an assignment that will be that impactful again. And that's something I take a lot of pride in.
You mentioned you had a couple phrases that those of us that know what Abrams Charter is and and why it was developed and some of the phrases that are actually in it. You spit out a few of those. And when you said like the Ranger Standard, I wanted to spell something that I've heard a few times throughout my career. And when I was in the 82nd, I heard a couple people say, there's these Rangers, they're trying to turn our battalion into a Ranger battalion. They're trying to turn us into a Ranger company, and I heard those things. And so I became, when I was back out in the Army as an officer, and when I was back out in the Army after, being a Ranger company commander, I started to feel like, okay, don't do that. Don't give my guys this feeling that I was trying to turn this company or this battalion into another Ranger battalion, right? And then when I got to the 25th Infantry Division and I became, the squadron commander of the Rattlesnakes, an actual lieutenant came up to me and he said, "Hey, sir, I got a question." And I said, "Yeah." And he goes, how come you haven't made like all the Ranger standards our standards? Or how come our standards are different? And I said, well, I've had this fear, if you will, like of being the Ranger that comes in and he's like trying to turn this unit in the 25th Infantry Division into a Ranger battalion. And he looked at me and he said, yeah, but that's what we want. The lieutenants, that we want standards, we want discipline, we want the highest standards. We want to be known as like one of the best units in the division. We started wearing our boonie hat everywhere we went, not just in the field. And it was a way of saying like, I'm proud because like, look, we're a little bit different. We're a reconnaissance unit, and I tried to find ways where they felt special and they felt like they were the best, right? Everywhere they go, it'll be apparent that they are the best, right? Abrams Charter. And I was like, that was a moment where it was like, hey, it's okay. The person that's coming up to you that's saying, don't turn it into a Ranger unit or don't come up with your highest standards. Like that's the person that wants you to lower it so that they can fit in, or they want you to, make it easy on them so it can be considered a take a knee organization, right? Don't fall for that is what I'm saying. Bring those standards that you've seen. So like, it's okay to bring things that you saw at Rudders to other units. It's okay. And I think the people that are in that unit, they're hungry for you to do that for them.
Absolutely, sir. I don't think you could have said it any better, right? It's at our core a lot of people, it takes a special kind of person to literally want to do the wrong thing, right? Most people want to be in a place that is valued, want to be in a place that is considered good at what it does or great at what it does, because it builds a pride in what it is that you're doing, and it builds an esprit de corps in that place, right? And something that you can, begin to be really proud of. And that is something that I have brought to every place that I've been since leaving the regiment, right? To include CST, right? Like when I was at CST, cadet summer training in Knox, the first year I was there, I was on the tactics committee. I was at the spot and the kids were brought to me, and I would see platoon after platoon of kids, but I didn't walk a platoon. And I was like, I want to bring the highest level of instruction that I can possibly bring to these platoons. And platoon after platoon was just like, wow, I learned something today. Like, great. That's what I wanted you to do. Mm-hmm. I wanted you to learn something today, right? And just off of that alone, that reputation began to build, right? And then in my second year going to CST, I took over my platoon. One Charlie. These cadets were from all over the place, but they'll always have a special place for me. And day one, I was like, oh my God, right? You know, it's just like, this ain't A&M. It's not even close. But it doesn't matter. One Charlie is going to do things the way One Charlie does things. I don't care what anybody else is doing. And I had a great walk team with me, Captain McCauley, Captain Sarah Hill, Sergeant Eckenrod, all combat arms guys, great crew. And they were down. And so we were like, let's do this. Let's make this like, let's give these kids some training, right? Yeah. And so it started with reworking that down and in thing again. It started with reworking everything they had. I was like, let me see your equipment, take it apart. It looks like shit. We're putting it back together the right way. That's what we did. Everybody else wanted to jump into op order planning. And I'm like, screw that. This is what we're doing.
Amen.
And we built it from the ground up. And those kids had such a high level of pride in that platoon and going through it. And I told them at the end, I said, you earned everything. You earned what your score is. I'm not here to give you candy, and you know that. So when it was over, you know, yeah, there might be other platoons that, sure, they handed this person that score, this score, but that didn't help them. And your experience by being here will help you in the future. You will thank me someday. Amen. This is like kind of what I was trying to say to him. So
yeah. Hey, there's two areas. There's two areas that I want to spend some time talking about. I want to talk about what's next with you, and about what you're already thinking about, how you're going to bring some of this to ARTB. I know you got to do your assessment, but like that, you have to have that's going on in your mind. And the second is, we've been talking a lot about leader development, but what are you trying to bring forward? What still have we not talked about from a leadership development, standpoint of how to develop a program, how to mentor not just the lieutenants, but you mentored some of those captains that are going back out to the Army that were with Texas A&M when you were at camp. And I know this because I also did CST. Every other cadre that you are interacting with, those captains, those majors, like something's rubbing off on them. That is leadership development, and how it has to be deliberate and it has to be planned, but it's every day. Those are kind of the two categories of two things that I want to spend a little bit of time with on. Start with what's next. What's on your mind right now, and what are you thinking about the most about bringing it to this next assignment?
First and foremost, it sounds really funny to say, but I want to bring a high level of skill and fitness. That's the very first thing that is on my mind right now. My partner and I, Staff Sergeant Henson, competed at Best Ranger this last year. And we trained very, very hard, put a lot into that for a very long time. And that did not go the way that I wanted that to go. That was much more difficult and humbling, and a big reality check for me to basically not be able to punch my ticket into day one. Taking nothing away from my partner, I'm disappointed for him, and I wish I could have done better. I know a lot more now about how I should have trained, about things I should have done on the day, but I am very, very, very thankful for the opportunity to have done it, at least, because we were the first team in all of USAC history to compete. So I hope that opens the door for others to follow. But that being said, it left a bad taste in my mouth, like real bad. I'm not happy about it, right? And so now I'm going back to the very place that I got carted out of because, I was not enough. So I want to make sure that when I go back to that place, I am enough. I am more than enough for, any of the physical requirements, any of the professional requirements, knowledge, fitness, bearing, all those kinds of things like that. I want to be plug and play, ready made, and go and crush that assignment. So that's what's on my mind right now.
With that, when you talk, people hear about Best Ranger, they see it, they see the videos and stuff like that. What's the one thing? Tell me what the one thing though that is the most, like, once you get there, it's so different Best Ranger is completely different. The level of training. What's the one thing that you tell somebody you've got to think about in preparation for Best Ranger that's different than what you thought it would be?
The speed. If you if you think you're fast enough, you're not. Like you got to go faster. You got to have the ability to not only speed and pace, but the speed in recovery, right? Like you have to have a very short window of time that it takes you to get your shit back together, right? Just as a little vignette, right? Me and my partner clocked a sub 14-minute 2-mile in kit for the first 2 miles of that kit run, and we were like in the bottom 3 or 4. Just letting you know, right? That's the level of speed we're talking about. Like the rest of these guys are running sub 6, right? And just cruising along, right? And it seemed like they were pretty inflammable, right? It took more, right? My energy requirements for me. So I understand there's a lot of like science-based training, science-based that, whatever, right? Got it. Hear you. Yes. Recovery. You need to be strong, like well enough to train. Got sweet. You need to kick your fucking ass sometimes, like hard, right? And put yourself in a position where you are in deep water. You need to drag yourself into deep water more often if you are having an aspiration at like competing at that, doing well at that, finishing that, winning that. You really have to. Yeah. So I wish I had done that a little more often. Like I said, we trained hard. We did, and we were consistent. And we were doing our job the entire time too. And there was a lot of factors. We both were brand new fathers as well. A lot of factors. Got it. That being said, you attack that again. I understand where I need to pivot. And that's, you got to make it shitty a little more often than I did.
Yeah, I appreciate you sharing that, and I love the way you described it. We had a Lieutenant Remy Pouncipore who competed a couple times out there, and he's like a world class triathlon, like ultra marathon, and he's like one of those guys that is truly fast. And like he said, he was middle of the pack, once he got out there. But he used the phrase, "You got to build capacity," because you had to be on your feet almost 20 hours a day. You're moving 20 hours a day. You had to go. It wasn't today's a ruck day and tomorrow's a swim day and then it's a run fast day on Thursday. It's no, that needs to be ruck in the morning, swim in the afternoon, run fast in the evening, and then immediately recover into Nightland Ave, like all in one day. If you're even going to be close to compete.
The crazy thing too is, I thought I was doing good, right? I did a 40-mile bike ride. I did a 6-mile run, and then I did a 5-mile ruck, right? I was like, okay, yeah, cool, man. It's just not, it's just not the same. Right. And
that's a whole nother level.
And again, just the level of the military athlete that showed up was truly humbling. Right. And for me, like, is that my ball of yarn? Is that my arena? No, I am not what you would consider to be an endurance guy. I am loaded with fast twitch, smash and grab, muscle. You want me to rip some shit apart? You want me to throw something through a door? You want me to body breach? You want me to sprint hard? I got all that. I definitely attacked something outside of my arena, which may be the other thing that I'm most proud of. When I put my foot on the scale at Best Ranger, I'm weighing every bit of 240 pounds. So, I was the heaviest, second oldest, and definitely not something that was my arena growing up, right? But very thankful for the experience because it really reset my level of what I consider to be hard. And I know that I will be able to do harder things in the future because I had that experience.
Yeah. Don't let me forget to introduce you to Ray Santiago. He was there at Best Ranger with you. He works with me here in Hawaii, but he also coaches, I think, a couple teams here in Hawaii, a couple teams at RTB. Ray finished first, he finished second, and he finished third in Best Ranger. He works with us now. He's out of the Army, but he works with us here at JPMRC. It's laughable when he gives me like some like coaching here, and I'm like, right, like I'm the last guy that I can't follow through on 1% of the things that you're giving me. Go ahead.
He was my RI.
Yeah, so he'll be spending some time with you guys like down there at Benning, but like, you know, I got to make sure I give him your phone number, and you guys get put in touch for what you're going to be doing down there for the guys that are going to be down there. Okay. You talked about Best Ranger, and you talked about what you were trying to bring to this next assignment. What else are you thinking about for this next part of your life and career?
You know, however it plays out at ARTB, you know I got to do, you know, RITEP and get certified to be an RI and do all those things like that, which I'm very much looking forward to, right? And I think it'll be massively beneficial as well for like Ranger U, right? It's going to allow me to reset things there and get back to more like the instructional. And I really have missed, you know, doing some more instructional stuff. But after that, you know, if going to move in and potentially take that Merrill's platoon sergeant spot, I'm very much looking forward to building on the culture that I'm sure is already there. I've met a couple of the Merrill's guys when I was at RTB. I was very impressed with them during the BRC train up. But I'm looking forward to making, you know, a culture there that, you know, people are excited. They want to work there. They want to get that development. They're getting development. I really want our guys not only to be ready to execute the Ranger School mission of being, you know, OP4 and doing those kinds of things and being a real hellacious problem for the patrols. You know, we're going to get out there and mix it up for sure. But I want them to be holistically ready to go, you know, trained as in the basics, trained as NCOs, understand the kind of NCOs they need to be, ready to move on from that platoon and go to conventional units and force comm and go be great. Go be great team leaders, go be great squad leaders, platoon sergeants in their own right, and take those standards and that lethality and that skill with them. If I can do that, I'm good with that. I'm good with that as my swan song, if you will.
Yeah. I appreciate that so much, you know, as I've been doing this, you know, for the last 10 years or so, I love talking to the younger soldiers, and I ask them questions like, what are you looking forward to the most about what you're getting ready to do? You know, is a way of finding out like what's going on this week and what are you excited about? And I want more soldiers to give me the answer of, I'm learning how to be an NCO. I can't wait to go to this school. I can't wait to, you know, to go and do these. I'm excited about these live fires that we're getting ready to go and do. And I feel like in the last 12 months to 2 years, potentially, it's like, it's becoming cool again to like the Army. It's becoming cool. It's cool again to like do hard PT, go out there and like be good at the Army. Before that, it was cool to like make fun of your chain of command, and it was like cool to not like the Army. And it was the cool thing was to see how little you could do and still be successful. Like that was cool for a bit. That's not cool anymore. And I see those people, and you know, shout out to Tropic Light Meme. Their new one is like, these guys never walk on Trimble Road. You know, like you never catch them walking out there, even though I'm walking all the fucking time, you know, out here near my house. But like, it's like, it's not cool to suck anymore. It's like, it's cool to be good at what you do. And, you know, they used to call, like the kids call them a try hard. Like, why are you trying so hard? You know, like it's cool to be good at what, and like the Army again.
You know, I'm glad you brought that up. You know what's not cool, you know, not being able to deal with hard things that come up and people that tend to sham and tend to want to live that bare minimum life. They're going to be in a lot of situations that are not cool, right? I think it's cool to be resilient. I think it's cool to be skilled. I think it's cool to be motivated and disciplined to achieve things. I think that's cool, right? And I think anybody that is in this profession would need to share that sentiment. But I hear what you're saying. Like there was definitely a time in the Army where it was like, wow, let's play how bad we could suck at our job today. You know, it's just like, it's kind of mind blowing, right? And you meet the types. What I will say about the Army, what I do like about the Army is those people that are like that, they stick out so hard because they are really so much of an exception to what the norm should be, right? And then you do have you have like a group of people in the middle that can be influenced one way or the other, right? It's contagious. But in my opinion, I've been able, just in my experience, I think I've been able to outshine that. When you have that substandard guy, it's like, you don't want to be that guy. You want to be this guy. You know what I mean?
Amen.
Because there's a way that you can enforce those standards. You could be that way with charisma too, right? You can bring that. You don't have to be screaming your head off and like, oh, on set. You don't have to be rigid and tight. I think that's one of the biggest things that puts people off or puts people away from wanting to do the hard stuff. It's the way you present it, right?
Yeah, you can do both.
You can build people up while you're kicking their ass. You absolutely can, right? It's possible to do, right? And so, but you're right. I think I have felt a little bit of a shift in that in the Army, and I'm happy about that. I'm excited about that. I mean, nobody wants to work with a bunch of people that are just miserable and don't want to be there and just want to be substandard, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, I think it is cool to be in the Army again.
So you talked a lot here about mentoring, junior NCOs, young soldiers, being a part of Ranger School. You're going to have the ability to thrive in like that kind of environment and that audience. Talk about the audience of, the lieutenants going to Ranger School, the lieutenants post Ranger School. Okay. Now you got to take what you learned or whatever. You're now going out to your unit, and we're going to develop leadership development models for their soldiers. They're the ones that got to plan the live fires and the sticks, you said 6 lanes, the live fire lanes, the knockout a bunker, right? And professional development and how it has to be, like it can't just be happenstance. Later development is deliberate. Later development is all the time, and how we're trying to get a little bit better, not just happenstance. It has to be kind of planned out, a leadership development program. What's your advice for those kind of people that are starting to put together their programs or their understand somebody else's leadership development program?
Right. So for if I'm speaking specifically to young lieutenants that are going to take that, or young leaders, one of the things that I tell a lot of our guys is ROTC, something dangerous gets thrown around. Trust your NCOs, right? There's danger in that statement, right? What we trust is what performs. I trust if I drop this pen, it will drop and hit the desk because gravity performs consistently all the time. I trust gravity, right? So I can trust what performs. To get to a level of trust with your NCOs to where you can trust them to do their job and trust them to do it right, you have to put them in positions to perform first. And so when you go to a platoon, there should be an assessment period where you close your mouth and you open your eyes, you open your ears, and you see how things are running there. Look for those little things. Look for the cleanliness. Look for the state of equipment. There are indicators everywhere that are going to tell you what the daily battle rhythm in a platoon looks like, right? It'll help you assess and gauge the professionalism of your platoon and of your NCOs. If you're seeing things that you don't like, let's put them in a position to perform, right? Whether that's a AFT, whether that's non-standard PT in the morning, whether that's crew drills, whatever it is, let's take a look and assess what's going on here. If you don't like what you see, that's when it's time, or if you like what you see, either way. But at that time, it's time to have a conversation with who should be your best partner. And that is your platoon sergeant, right? Now, I'm not talking about initial counseling. I'm not talking about laying out the lanes. That should happen before that, right? Mm-hmm. I'm here to facilitate and communicate for you. I'm the PL. That's my lane. It's top cover. It's providing what needs to happen to get training from A to B. You guys are responsible for the down and in, the training of this formation to the standard. It's your job to know things. It's your job to enforce the standards in accordance with the commander's intent, the policy letters, where we are. right? And it is my job to facilitate and advocate for this platoon up, and then synthesize and filter information as it comes down as to what needs to be actioned and what I can handle, and then the things that are never going to actually come to fruition, so that I'm not overloading you with, all the crazy stuff. After you get through that, I should say, that's when we start assessing that performance. If you like what you see, how do we maintain this? How do we build out training and a structure and a battle rhythm for this platoon that this can be maintained? And oh, by the way, you, the NCOs, you, the junior enlisted, you guys are running this and you're going to enforce this, right? Or I don't like what I see.
Mm-hmm.
This is where we're falling short. How do we get this to work? Not me telling you this is how we're going to do it. I want you owe me an answer, platoon sergeant that has been in the Army for 14 years and been in this unit for the last 6. I need you to tell me what works here, because this ain't working, right? I need you to tell me how it is we are going to fix this issue. How are we going to go from, bad to average to good to great? How are we going to do that? And understand that it is 100% your responsibility, whether you are a PL or a platoon sergeant or a squad leader for that matter, or anybody in that platoon, right? But especially the top 2, right? Should be the best marriage in the platoon, right? Should be your PL platoon sergeant. You guys have to understand that you are a steward of that platoon. It is not your platoon in perpetuity. You are a steward of that platoon. And the aim should be, I am leaving this place better than I got it. I have it for a short window, and I need to get it from here to here in that time, right? It's the Dallas Cowboys haven't always had the same quarterback, but there's always been the Cowboys, right? And some quarterbacks have done a great job, and some have done a bad job. That's your job. You're the quarterback. You're being handed a team. It's your team for a little bit. Do a good job with it, right? And understand that it's a team fight. It has to be, down to the lowest guy. It is too much for the 22-year-old young man who has been in the Army for 13 months to come in there, handle an entire platoon of guys, and try to run it himself. Ain't going to happen. It's not going to work.
Yeah. And like when you talk about leader development, like the daily grind is the leader development. It's not just an LPD. It's not, let's go read a book, right? That's a part of leader development, but that's not the only part. How to run a training meeting, how to prepare for a training resource meeting, how to prepare a range and do an MOI for a range. Like those are part of leader development. How to do a tactical decision exercise, where we're getting ready to go to a CTC, and you have to receive the order, you have to turn it into something, and you have to talk through how you're going to react when that goes on at every level, the lieutenants, the captains, the field grades, right? Everybody needs the opportunity to develop in the job that they're in going forward. What's your advice for the 100%. People that are in the kind of that next category, the company commander, the first sergeant, the company commander, the ones that, how do you kind of lead up, and how do those people kind of develop themselves or their people around them?
I mean, man, that's a good question. I've seen company commanders do it all sorts of ways, but in my opinion, leadership is a people business. It's 100% a people business, right? So as a company commander, I understand that it can be really hard to get away from the meeting after the meeting after the meeting, and the 10 minutes prior to the 10 minutes prior, and this and that and the other, and the computer, the all-encompassing computer, right? Well, I know you have a company training room for a reason. There are people in there that do things for the company to keep in line with battalions, trackers, and whatever it is, right? And when I was headquarters platoon sergeant Deco 375, there was quite a lot that got sent my way. And I had a team of guys that were great, and they helped me out with it. What that allowed was some freedom of maneuver for first sergeant and the company commander to, kind of be present and around the platoons and, kind of get a feel for what was happening, be seen, be heard, get down and use your eyes and ears to see what the actual problems are, because very rarely are real problems, the real ones, going to be kind of like reported up. until it gets to a boiling point, right? So as the company commander, I'm not telling you to be derelict in your duties, but what I am saying is like, understand today's shit, understand tomorrow's shit, and understand shit that ain't gonna matter. Like it's just, there are certain things that tasker is always going to be there, and that tasker is just going to sit there, and it's going to, I need this, I need that, I need this. Like, okay, cool. Hey, by the way, your roster, it's there. So I'm like getting rid of that. This is dumb. This clearly didn't even have a military decision-making process to it. That there's no way that could happen. I'm synthesizing all that crap out. Okay, and we'll talk about it when I go to the training meeting at the battalion level, how dumb all that is. These are the 2 or 3 things that actually need to be done. These are the 2 that require my attention. This one I can delegate. Okay, that gives me all this time that I can be around the boys.
Yeah.
It's just about getting good at synthesizing that information. And you develop those skills, you start to develop those skills as a PL. Because as a PL, you're kind of the little company commander for your platoon. Things are going to drift down. Some of your best friends that you can have as a PL, obviously, besides your platoon sergeant, who will give you some of this wisdom, I would hope, is your training room NCO, your XO, and your first sergeant, right?
Yeah.
Like, yes, your company commander is your raider. Got it. But he doesn't want you darkening the doorway of his office all the time, getting chummy with him. Go get to know the most senior NCO in your company. Go have some conversations with your first sergeant. Go have some conversations with your XO.
Amen.
and your training room NCOs. If you understand how to work with those guys, leverage them, understand their knowledge, it will help you so much as a PL in understanding what's important and what's not important. My final piece of advice for a young PL and for squad leaders and team leaders for this matter, I'm talking to the NCOs, those are your men to care for, to provide for, you are responsible for, you have an obligation to them. They are not your drinking buddies. They are your age, perhaps, and I'm not saying that you can't have a great culture of esprit de corps when it is appropriate. But you're 22, 23 years old, fresh out of college, and most of your fire team leaders are the same age, right? You are their platoon leader. You are there to be the steward of the platoon. You're not there to ham it up with those guys in a capacity that becomes too familiar to the point where you lose credibility in your job.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, I have seen that happen to some young PLs where the joking turns to, social, the social turns to way too familiar, the way too familiar with too many drinks turns into something silly happened that just completely nukes the credit of that young PL. And once you lose that credibility, you just can't get it back. So I would say be very cautious of that.
Yeah. You threw out the training NCO, and for, when my last 5 months in the Ranger Battalion, I got to spend as the training NCO. I got in Charlie Company 175. I got pulled up. I think that is such a huge opportunity for people that are out there that are getting ready to go to ROTC. Maybe they're putting in their green to gold packet. That maybe they got picked up for West Point or the prep school, or they're getting ready to get out of the Army and they're going to go to college. All of those are, I think, a great opportunity to pull them in as a training NCO to see some of those things at the company or up into the 3 shop, if you will, at the battalion level, because those are the places where all I did for 5 or 6 months was ranges, get the ammo, the ranges set up for the company, do the jump logs, and do jump master duties. Like, that's all I did for the last months. And so all I got to do was refine those skills. And I was surrounded by the XO, the first sergeant, the commander, and all the platoon leaders inside of that company. And I won't start rattling off all the names of the platoon leaders that are all general officers right now that were in that company back then. But those were the people I was rubbing elbows with, and they were giving me advice of what to do once I went off to college. I didn't appreciate it or know at that moment. Like, that's what, those 5 or 6 months, that's what I was getting out of it. I think that's leader development. I think that was a leader development model. And you said it there, where we brought people over to the headquarters platoon and we put them into those training NCO spots because they were workhorses for us to take care of those things. And I think it makes them better leaders as they go on in the Army.
I couldn't agree more. That's a place where you really get dirty. You get the dirty yards. You get the hard yards in that one, right? You know, like here, it's a thankless job in a lot of ways. It's a lot of work. Sarcastically, we had a second sergeant sign above my desk.
Instead of the first sergeant, right? Yeah.
Yeah. And, but you know, it was a, it was a grind at times, but I'm very thankful for that job and the opportunity that it gave me and learning, like you said, I learned a ton about how the battle rhythm of a company and a battalion function.
Yeah. Yeah. Mike, your energy is, it's hard to find somebody that I think has got the same level of energy of doing from a leader development standpoint as I get every morning. And I feel like we could have this conversation for 2 hours and 30 minutes, and even the true believers might listen, you know, going into. And so some of that stuff we'll save for another episode, for another conversation, you know, especially after you get into ARTB and you start cutting your teeth, you start figuring out what's going on there, and tell me what it's all about. Tell me what you're seeing there now that you've been there for a little while. That's kind of a future conversation, but I want to let you. Is there anything that you hoped in this conversation that we would have covered for this audience for today's conversation that you wish we would have talked about today?
I mean, to be honest with you, I think we've unpacked a lot. There's a lot that's talked about. I just want to say, honestly, in closing for this episode, you know, thank you to everybody at A&M. It was a special place. It was incredible. Opportunity to work over there with those officers, NCOs, and the cadets, obviously, and now lieutenants. I hope to see them come through the schoolhouse, and I hope that they understand that I'll be a lifelong resource for them. And I don't mean that as lip service. I'm serious. I want to say thank you to the Ranger Regiment for helping develop all of this stuff, you know, over the years. Charlie Company, obviously, you know, a place that is very special. CERT and the outstanding teammates that I've had there. Everybody knows who they are, but they've all had a hand in kind of making this thing, that this person that I am, and had a big hand in Ranger U, you know, obviously, directly or indirectly. And I want to thank you for giving me the opportunity to come on here and talk about the subject and really kind of unpack, if you will. I've had so much bottled up, I think, coming out of this last assignment that has allowed me to kind of get off my chest and talk to somebody about and tell somebody about, you know, this isn't like dinner table conversation. My wife doesn't want to hear about this stuff. Yeah. And so I think it's awesome. And I appreciate you giving that to me, and the folks in ROTC, the folks back in regiment, the folks at A&M, anybody that's going to listen to this. I hope they take something out of it. I hope they get something out of it. Colonel Wayne and the rest of those guys that have been on the show and recommended your show and think very highly of this. I hope they enjoy it too. And I'm looking forward to however many installments we wind up doing on this thing. So.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. And now, like, you are a true believer, like, at this point. I hope that, you know, you point people in my direction, you point, you know, you throw me a couple of those topics, throw me those questions, and I'll work them into, you know, the conversations. I love doing them with people when they're in a transition, when they just finished up something and they're getting ready to go into the next, because what it does is it kind of brings you this level of clarity. It says, what's important in my life? In your case, it's, I got to get my family. I got to get them settled in. I've got to get them a place to live and the kids' schools and all those motion things. And then I've got to figure out what my unit needs for me. And what is it that unit needs specifically? It's not just what you hope to bring. It's what do they need, you know, when you get there. What do they need? What's the first 90 days look like? How am I going to make an impact on that organization? And I can't wait to hear the next time we kind of talk about this, is like, how has the first 90 days gone? You know, was it half of what you thought it would be, and what was completely different? Just like the Best Ranger story. You know, what was completely different, you know, once you got there and you got kind of into it?
100%, sir. Looking forward to that future conversation. And I know we both got things to get at, so thank you for your time, and look forward to our future conversation.
All right, brother. Talk soon. Thanks for listening today. I hope we sparked some thoughts about the people that have inspired you to be who you are today. I hope you share some of your thoughts, and better yet, demonstrate them for the people in your life. Our pursuit is to get a little bit better every day. Progress equals small victories stacked on top of each other, building like compound interest. Keep stacking these positive habits. Habits like getting up early, working your butt off, learning something new, being positive, and surrounding yourself with phenomenal people. Please share your comments at the links in the show notes and DM us at Teach Me to Fish podcast on Instagram or Facebook. Looking forward to our next conversation.
Times don't fly too high. Be sure to keep the ground in sight. Fly forever if you keep it tight. Love the world, but keep the sky on your mind.